Welcome to What is Going for new thought from the edge of Each week on Time's flagship radio show, veteran broadcaster, author, and media consultant Sandie Sedgbeer conducts thought-provoking interviews with inspirational authors, artists, musicians, scientists, speakers, and filmmakers who are working at the point where spirituality and science meet consciousness at the very edge of Here is your host, Sandie Sedgbeer.
Hello. When times are tough and everything we rely on is unravelling, we all need a trusted source of guidance and tools to help us navigate the turmoil. One person thousands of people are turning to for just that is globally acclaimed energy intuitive, channeler and musician Lee Harris, whose grounded practical teachings, popular monthly energy reports and online courses have been helping thousands of conscious, intuitive and sensitive people around the world to heal, thrive and live a better life. Lee Harris joins me today to talk about his latest books, Conversations with Disease, which offer practical information from his guides about the energetics of the new human soul and how to awaken your dimensional soul. Lee Harris, welcome.
Hello, Sandie. Thank you for having me.
Lee, you've been a very busy guy with 2 books out within a very short period of time. How do you do it?
Firstly, because they're not written books in the sense that I don't have to sit down and write them, they're taken from audio conversations. That hugely cuts down the time. And then we just have to put the work into the editing. But I also had this feeling that these books needed to come out 9 months apart. It's an ongoing series. And certainly for the first 4, just my guidance tells me they need to be close, not too far apart.
Yeah. You began channeling the disease very fairly quietly, actually, back in 1999, and now you're sharing their insights with millions around the world. How do you feel about that? I mean, you've come such a long way.
Yeah, I feel better about it now. I still have my moments. There are certain conversations I find myself in where I might be having a really nice connection with a person, and that comes into the conversation, and I notice them freak out or stiffen or not quite know what to do with it. I don't find that very convenient because connection is what we all enjoy, what we crave. But I've come a long way. I think in a way, just on my own personal development, having to stand as a channeler has really helped me with some of my own programming, because I grew up, like many in Britain, with parents who very much instilled in us worry about what the neighbors think. So that was screaming at me in the early years when I started to do it more publicly, and especially because initially I just found a small group of people. It's interesting now; it's so out there. Anybody can Google you and find that out about you. It happened to me the other day in a meeting about a mortgage. He said, "Oh, I've looked you up," and I was like, "Okay." So, but in a way, I kind of, what I remind myself is, none of this stuff should be weird to any of us. We were just trained to believe that we are separate from spirit. So whenever my own ego or mind or programming comes up, I remind myself we're all outgrowing this idea that any of us are divorced from spirit.
Absolutely, yeah. What's interesting is, I've watched you over the years progress, and you seem to be just like the people that you are talking to, in that you are learning as you go as well, and you are evolving, and we get to see that, which we don't often get to see in channels.
That's interesting. Well, I really related to what you said at the beginning, even though you were pointing it at me. I like everybody, need the things that keep me afloat, whether it's my own connection to disease and my own private relationship with them, or whether it's people out there, friends, family members, inspiring voices, who keep me connected to the fact that we're in a very tricky time globally. And I think if you're a sensitive, or if you're someone who feels a lot, or if you're someone who has always had a stronger connection to spirit than maybe this world that we see on a 3D level, I think it can be very challenging to be here. And I know that was my story. So in a weird way, I feel like the job I do now is exactly what I needed. And on some level, of course, it still serves my growth to do this job, but I'm only really doing something that was a vital thing for my life. So if people say to me, "Oh, thank you, your energy updates really helped me," I'm just grateful, because I think, great, I'm glad I can give something back that for some people, I will be one of their voices. For others, they won't resonate with me, but that's not for us to decide. I think we just have to show up and do what we're compelled to do.
Absolutely. The Z's are a collection of 88 energies. Why 88? Is there any significance to that number?
Well, it's funny because when they first told me that, I thought, oh, there are 88 keys on the piano, and 8 is an infinity symbol. And there were lots of things that spoke to me about the 8, but they've explained it in two different ways. They've said that they are a harmonic, balanced number as a group for reasons of the way they communicate with me and reasons of the vibration that they communicate through me that goes to others and helps others with their vibration. But what they've also explained is they're not a fixed group. They are not necessarily only fixed as an 88. So you could look at me and go, okay, that's Lee, he's one human being. But actually, I'm connected to all of these beings, and we're all connected to everybody around us. So they say we are a group of 88, but we can also channel and we can speak to other energies, entities, beings as we need to. So it's an interesting thing when we get into fixed numbers. And what I always find very interesting, I've never been that interested in fixed definition. It's never been in my nature. But as I have done this job, I come across the human part of us in everybody around the world who wants, what's the detail? What's the answer? And for me, I understand the need for those fixed details, but I just know for myself, the more I've learnt, the less fixed everything is. It doesn't mean I'm always living from that place. I can be as human and as small in myself if I'm going through a lesson as any of us are. But none of it's fixed. And the more you break down those walls, as you know, and as the listeners know, and the viewers, getting into very hard and fast details can be quite problematic because at some point you're going to outgrow those.
Yeah, yeah. You published 2 volumes back in 2012 and 2014, Energy Speaks, Conversations with the Z's. Now, in this new series of books, you've done a completely different format, and you're working with psychotherapist and author Dianna Edwards. What was the inspiration for that change?
Well, these were never supposed to be books. So these were conversations. Many years ago, Dianna asked me, she's very strong in the area of grief and death as transformation and spiritual windows in our life. So she had said, could I interview the Z's about death and dying at some point? And I said, sure. And we just kind of parked it. And then I remember it was sometime in 2021 when I asked her, would you do some recordings with me for the portal, my members community? And we'll just do a conversation format. We would do this privately when we met as friends. And Dianna is so good at asking the kinds of questions I wouldn't think of. And obviously, I can't ask the Z's a question in that format. I can do it privately if I type, but that's a whole other dynamic. So we started recording. We thought we'd do 2 conversations. It went off like a rocket, and I think we had 5 conversations in 2.5 days. And literally on day 2, I was in the little casita where I was staying while we were recording these in Santa Fe, and I literally heard from above my head, "These can be books." And I was like, really? And they were like, "Yep, these can be books." So I was quite determined. Understandably, when you first go to a publisher and they're like, "I'm not sure about the conversation format," I'm like, "Nope, that's what it is. That's what it needs to be." Because people need to be able to read this as if they are eavesdropping on a conversation. And then when they have that conversation that they're eavesdropping onto, they will be having all their own epiphanies. So no, it was one of those things that was not the architect's plans for this revealed themselves rather than were my starting point, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense, actually, because a lot of non-fiction books, you're learning. Somebody is talking to you, but by having the conversations, we are sitting in Diana's seat. We're having that conversation, and therefore we're much more engaged. Yeah, it's a good device, and it works really well. Really
And
well.
I should also say that, Dianna and the Z's have a great connection, but Dianna has found through this process that she, much like any of us who work intuitively for an audience, And you know this from doing an interview. Yes, you're asking me questions, but you've got one ear, eye, and sense on what the audience needs. And you can feel how the audience are reacting when you're interviewing. So she's got a very big ear and mind and heart on what are the right things for me to ask in this topic. And she said her biggest challenge is getting rid of questions. You know, she starts with a huge amount.
Yeah.
She has to edit them down. And then, of course, because the Z's are the Z's and they will go off, you know, you ask them about rocks and all of a sudden within 3 minutes, they're talking to you about volcanoes in the earth because to them it all relates. But then Dianna has to just kind of ride the bronco, as she says.
Yeah. Yeah. So book one, this is the energetics of the new human soul. What is their perspective on the new human soul?
Well, it's interesting because book one and book two are very much, from our perspective, they're joined. And when I took the material to New World Library, they said they would like the first book to just be the first three conversations, which was much shorter than I imagined, but I understood their logic. So, in a way, book one and book two are, to us, the overture of the series. And Dianna and has had this conversation with the Z's. So, the energetics of the new human soul. And then book two is called awaken your multidimensionality. Really, those two sentences are what we are becoming. So we are becoming more multidimensional and more conscious. You can see this when you look at very human aspects on the planet right now. And I'm not talking about some of the levels of control and manipulation that we're becoming more aware of as a people. I'm just speaking about the more conscious points of our society that we're seeing. Some of the definitions of who you're supposed to be as a person, or as a mother, or as a father, or as a husband, or some of these things are breaking down. You know, many of us grew up in a time where we're coming out of quite fixed ideas of what a human is. And even though there's a lot of chaos at the moment, there is also a lot more possibility. So we are becoming more multidimensional beings, both because consciousness is rising on the earth and we are beginning to break down some of the old paradigms. But it's interesting, the Z's also say that this is happening in direct relationship to some of the more tough stuff that we're living through, particularly when it comes to control of us as a humanity versus us being supported to be as expansive as we were designed to be. And that's very much the battleground that we find ourselves in at this time on Earth, in a much more pronounced and revealed way than ever before.
You know, something I noticed as I'm reading the books, I mean, you've been doing this 23 years. Okay, we go back to sort of 1999. 1999 was also the year that our mutual friend Susie Miller started working with the kids. And they were saying that they were the new humans. And for a long time, nobody understood what that meant. But now, here we are 23 years later. So when you look at and join the dots, you were being prepared for this point in time. You know, those kids have been preparing us for this point in time. I'm absolutely convinced of that. You begin to then see, you know, the purpose of all of this. We think, oh, this just happened. No, it didn't just happen.
No.
It feels like it's all been planned.
They always say that. They always say that no matter how you might find yourself reacting to things that are going on the planet right now, and by the way, it's very healthy and natural for us to have sadness, grief, outrage about some of the things that we see. That's part of the human design that many of us are going through, burning off, evolving from. They also say that this is a destiny path that has been in action and seeded on the planet for so long. It's just we're in the point where things start to reveal. And one of the things that's interesting that came to me when you were speaking about wonderful Susie and what the work she's been doing, I think for many people, and I know this was true for me back in the day, there can be this black and white mind that goes, but how can it be the energetics of the new human soul? Because I look over here and this person's very unconscious, or this doesn't look very conscious. And again, we're all unique. We're all in subgroups and larger groups, and that's how it's supposed to be. The Z's have said that you only need 30% of the planet to wake up for it to be a tipping point. And they said we're somewhere in the early 20s right now. And to them, waking up doesn't mean everybody's doing Kundalini yoga or everybody's a raw vegan, because Kundalini yoga and being a raw vegan might be some of your spiritual pathways, but they're not going to be everyone's pathway. They simply mean becoming awake and alive to the fact that we are spirit in a human body, not a human divorced from spirit that someone else can organize our relationship to.
Yeah. Well, the book covers all kinds of things like how to navigate the current state of environmental, political, and cultural disarray, which is badly needed. Also, how to understand the interaction of the brain, the mind, and the heart. Say a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's funny. What comes to me is a conversation I was having with a very good intuitive friend earlier today, actually. And she was talking, she's very, very intuitive, and it's something she does for work. But she also has this brilliant mind. And she was caught because she was going, oh, my mind can't get my head around this. And I was just saying, well, does it need to? Understand the mind wants to fight, because that's what our minds do. But you have to not give it all the power in this situation. What would your intuition say? But understandably, because her mind was emotionally attached to some things from her past, as we all have, she couldn't go to that place because the mind was trying to unlock something through the mind, which it never will. So they talk about the relationship between brain, mind, and heart, that they can start to become less separate, that we as a society have been taught to separate those things, compartmentalize those things. And what they speak about with brain and mind are higher brain, higher mind. So if you think about it, I think in our society, we often speak about the mind, especially even in spiritual circles, as this negative, controlling, organizing thing. But I know, as someone who lives in my intuition a lot, well, my mind and my intuition, they're kind of in the same area. Sure, I go a little higher for the intuition, but they're all kind of reaching me here. So how can we villainize one part of us up here and open to another part? There's a whole section in the book about how that's changing, not just on Earth in the way people view it, but for us personally. Can we start to appreciate all the different parts of us and see how they're changing and allow that to happen? But what's tricky for us as human beings is it's no different to the grief process. Something happens to you in life, you lose a loved one, you lose a relationship that you thought you were in, you go through something that rocks you. And even if you can see why, on a spiritual level or on a future level, why you need to go through it, most of us still have to go through the grieving and the shedding and the letting go of who we had become in relation to this person. So I look at it that way. When it comes to energetic upgrades, I always am struck by people who will get all excited about, I'm so excited because I'm going to have new consciousness. And I'm a bit more cautious. I'm like, okay, I'm glad I'm going to have new consciousness, but I'm wondering what I'm going to have to go, what's going to have to burn off me or purge to get to the other side. And it's not to say I resist it, but it's recognizing the energetic work that you go through and the energetic surgery that you go through as a person that I think we need to talk more about. And I think it's the one thing, it's why I do my work. The reason I do my energy updates is, while I use the Z's to get the headlines and the themes for the months, I speak about fairly esoteric, energetic subjects in as human and as grounded a way as I am capable of, for the audience who want my way of seeing things or my way of delivering things, because I think we have a missing piece there. We've separated spirituality from humanity, and actually there's a bridge between the two. And the Z's would say the brain, mind, heart, we have to redefine our connection and connectivity to all of those in order to get there.
The other thing that I notice is sometimes it's happening so quietly and slowly that you don't notice it. You just suddenly think, wow, 2 years ago, I wouldn't have said that. I wouldn't have thought that. And this is happening to the public as well. We're finding a lot of people who would, they may not want to follow your channels, but they're talking about energy, which they might not have done 4 or 5 years ago.
I am loving that because, just for me, it's always about the random conversations I have in the street. the people I don't really know, who I meet, interact with, the person on the tube or the person on the bus or the person in the taxi or the person in the shop. And it's interesting to me how our way of speaking has changed. It's wildly different to 20 years ago. There are new levels of understanding that people have. There are words that we weren't using. I mean, even this idea of toxic relationships. I think only certain psychological or spiritual circles would speak about that a few decades ago. And now it's just out there in the mainstream and people have an understanding of it. So there is this lovely evolution that's happening that, of course, is not dependent on one teacher, one book, one school, one religion. It's just happening to us as a society, and we're all finding the different voices, teachings, and experiences that we each need to get back to that place of we are of spirit, and we've forgotten that, and that's why we are diseased.
And the thing that most of us forget is it's really like a wave, isn't it? I mean, we may feel that we are gradually becoming a little bit more awake or a little bit more enlightened, but that's also impacting people without us having to do anything. Just because we are responding differently, other people start responding differently.
It's funny, the books I first self-published, which then later got published in a new and bigger edition by New World Library called Energy Speaks. The Z's are always saying your energy does so much of the talking. And isn't it true? You go into a party or a restaurant and there's a person that you see who is just there are two sides to it. There's the person that you are attracted to because your energy recognizes that and their energy, and that can be very personal to the two of you. But then there is the person who stands out in the room because they're just sat there quietly and they have a peaceful or a big or a generous aura, and they're behaving quite differently to a lot of the other people. So yeah, that to me is always a reminder that the way we permeate into a room and the way we show up is actually more internally driven than most of us were trained to understand or believe.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to go to break in a few moments, but before we do, we're going to play out with a clip of the Z's talking about the nature of the conversations. So listen to this.
While we will be speaking to you with Dianna about this journey of being both human and soul at the same time, we ask you to listen with an open mind and an open heart, and to not get too caught up in an idea of wishing it were different on Earth today. For you are going through some tumultuous times in Earth's history that have long been forecast, have long been prophesized. But there is so much love, light, and joy to not only be found on the planet right now, but more importantly than that, to be created by you inside yourselves and then moved out into the world. And that is the purpose and nature of these conversations specifically. They will help you to widen your understanding, your experience, and your ability to create in that way.
Om Times TV. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
Hello, I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, host of Om Times' flagship radio show, What Is Going On? And as an author, editor and 13 times book judge who's read thousands of books and interviewed hundreds of authors, I'm constantly asked what's really worth reading and what's not. So I created the No BS Spiritual Book Club to help you save time and money by picking the brains of discerning names who've walked this path before you. There's no catch, no fees and no BS, just an ever-growing library of 10 best spiritual book lists from some of your favourite authors and teachers, plus free book excerpts, audios and video interviews with people like Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., David G., Lee Harris, Mark Nepo and more. From well-known classics to hidden gems you've never heard of, it's the only no BS guide to the best spiritual books to enlighten your journey of self-discovery. So why not join the club? Get inspired and save money at the nobsspiritualbookclub.com.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Welcome back. Lee Harris, the Z's compare the soul to a pilot light. What do they mean by that?
Yeah, there's a whole section where they speak about the flame of our soul energy and how it can grow or it can diminish. And the way they describe who we are as human beings, they say that we arrive on Earth as this very expressed soul, and depending on how supported, encouraged, or allowed we are to express that soul in those first few years, depending on where we're born, what we're born into, who is raising us, then that's going to either quite quickly diminish in its full expression and become organized, meaning you learn, oh, I can't do that, I can't say that, I shouldn't do that, I get punished if I do that. So you start to pull back on your natural expression. And of course, some of that is good learning. You know, there are certain things that you wouldn't want to be doing in human society that as a child you might want to try. But there is an enormous amount of modification that goes on for all of us. So we suppress or repress parts of our soul because of how we do or don't fit into society. So what they say is when your soul is fully expressed, you feel free, alive, present, able to be here. And when your soul is being, shall we say, put in the back seat because you're going through some human lessons or some human learnings, you get a little tighter. And they say not to see the human lessons as a bad thing, because it's usually us overcoming those learnings that allow us to free up that part of our energy again. We're often replaying things that we may have first encountered when we're 4 at the age of 64. And you think, well, I've surely I dealt with that, you know, but it's not even about that. It's not about the story of it. It's not about whether it happened with your mom or a guardian, or it's about the energy that remains in you until you have gone to the other side of it. So that's why it's so important not to judge yourself. You know, they say the quickest thing you can do to stop your progress is judge yourself, which I think for many of us who are recovering self-judges, that's a very interesting truth to learn. So the soul, the pilot light of our soul, we can do things in our life that can help it to grow. And we can repeat habits, patterns, and scenarios in our life that just keep it held down.
Self-judgment, I think, has to be, you know, the epitome of what this age is all about. Everything that we've got access to, you know, social media, etc. It's all about self-judgment, and we only have to look at the kids today to see, you know, what a problem that is causing. So I love what you said. It's, you know, it's really important for people to hear that.
You bringing that up just hits me yesterday. I was having a conversation with one of my loved ones, and they were saying that they were quite nervous to tell someone in their life about something because they said, well, I'm trying to let go of my own self-judgment about it before I tell them. And I just said, because I know this person they're talking about, I said, well, that person's quite judgmental. I said, so you wouldn't even be feeling some of this if you were telling your other friend who isn't judgmental. So it took me many years to understand that my self-judgment didn't originate with myself. It was swallowed. And it was swallowed over time by many, many people who the energy of judgment would come my way. And I would, rather than rebelling against it, I would go, oh, okay, I don't want to feel that judgment again. So I will become that judgment in myself to modify my behavior so I don't feel that discomfort again. So one of the things I'm very mindful of with myself, and I always run these checks, is when I'm in a relationship issue with somebody, I do my due diligence on myself. And then I also look at them and I'm like, oh, of course you're feeling quite nervous to tell this person your truth, because you historically see this person get volatile, angry, defensive. So, yes, work on your own stuff, but also know who you're dealing with and know how to do that in an appropriate way. So, I think that the myth of self is exactly that. We all have this inner life, but if we're honest with ourselves, our inner life is not just our soul life. It's our soul life plus who we've become in relationship to the society that we've grown up in and the experiences that we've had.
Yeah, very, very good points. So I want to talk about book 2, which is all about awakening our multidimensional souls. What does that look like, and what tools does these offer us to help us do that?
Well, I guess an example I could give is, let's say you are a 30-year-old woman living in the American Midwest, and what you believed about your life up until this point was you were supposed to get married and have 2 kids and be happy wife. And that was what you were told. That was the path that was laid down for you. And in your mind, you thought that was it. You thought that was enough. You're there, you've got 2 young kids, and you are feeling just dissatisfied. And it's not that you don't love your partner, it's not that you don't love your kids. Sure, it's tiring being a parent, more so than you realized, but there's something you're missing. And what you realize you're missing is you ticked off those goals. So all of a sudden, you're in those goals, and the part of your brain that told you when you get these goals, you will be happy and fulfilled, suddenly you're like, ooh, now someone else might be happy and fulfilled. And they might be happy and fulfilled like that for 20 years. But our multidimensional soul, it wants us to grow. It wants us to have new experiences. So the challenge in this for all of us is the comfort zone that we all like, especially in these crazy times, because you definitely need to know, how do I stabilize myself or regulate myself or calm myself down if I feel stimulated? Those things are key, because without knowing how to help yourself in moments of stress, you're going to be in trouble, and you're going to keep replaying those patterns until you create some kind of awareness and understanding around what you personally need to reset yourself. But the multidimensional soul in us is realizing that we can be much more than we perhaps believed we were supposed to be. And I'm not a big fan of saying that, because I think sometimes there is this idea of, well, I'm just not as big as I need to be. And I don't think it's always about being big. I don't think it always has to look like a big thing in the world. Often, for me anyway, and for many I know, it has been cultivating a deeper awareness of your inner life as much as your external life, so that you can bring the two into balance. You don't tend to live from a multidimensional soul through the externals, even though the externals will be the expression of that. But if you're really paying attention, every external dream you create and manifest should change you internally. And usually it's painful when it doesn't. And usually what happens is people go, oh, I thought I'd be really happy when I got this. And it's like, well, that's okay. No, this is not where happiness lives. But how great that you've achieved this and seen this. Because now, can you be grateful that that thing in your life is maybe increased your happiness 3%? And maybe you can always be grateful for it and you never need to get rid of it. But now we go a bit deeper, and now we go, what's really important? So the multidimensional soul really for me is the spiritual life. And can you find the spiritual life in your personal relationship to the world from inside? And can you find the spiritual life happening outside on the street? You're feeling a bit down, and you saying, universe, I want a sign, and someone walks past you who looks just like your dad, who is your guardian angel in life, even though he's now passed on. That's a sign. Are you paying attention? And it's not that the sign was put there for you to see. The signs are everywhere. It's just what dimension are we seeing from? So there can be this human idea of, oh, good, an angel was sent to Trafalgar Square today to cheer me up. No, the angel was going to be in Trafalgar Square anyway. But you reached a dimension of seeing, feeling, and sensing where you opened up to see it. So that's the point, that the world is the world, and what's going on around us can actually be seen and felt in a myriad of ways. That's why it's such an inside job as to how we relate to it. And that's why you have to be very patient too, and let the soul lead you, rather than getting into some human achievement idea of, I should be high vibrational. Well, you're not. So let's trust that and let's go, interesting. What am I burning off? Because we have this very achievement, goal-oriented way of living that we've been taught.
Mm. Yeah, you're right. And, you know, a lot of people who are waking up, let's use that phrase, you know, are now looking, okay, what do I need to do to go further, to go deeper? What do I need to do to really develop and, you know, become my multidimensional self? And they're looking outside of themselves for the answers. You know, give me an exercise, give me something that I need to do, give me a recipe. And it's not always, you know, that doesn't always help. It's something that is growing from within them. How do you, you know, when people ask you that, and you must get this all the time, people come into you and, okay, I'm here, tell me what to do.
Yeah.
You know, how do you handle that one? What do you say to people?
Well, it's a good question. I'm trying to think when I was last asked a question like that. I mean, of course, what you do come across doing this work is you do see how much we want to be told what to do. You do see how much we want the answer to soothe us. And my experience is answers soothe or reset us temporarily, and that should be enough, because there is no map. You know, you and I don't know what the map of our lives is. We don't even know when we're going to die. You know, maybe if we live a long life, we have an idea of what kind of age we'll be, but we have no idea. So that's where, to me, there's nothing wrong with chasing externals unless you are ignoring your internal, because that's when people get unhappy. They keep chasing an external, hoping it will give them some inner feeling. And my way of living is paying attention to the external dreams I want to create when they happen, and noticing what does or doesn't happen to me inside. And some of them I'm like, oh, well, I'm glad I did that or experienced that. And now I've experienced that. And there was some part of me that was curious, but I don't need to experience that again. But other times I will notice there is a shift in me that becomes permanent. So, for example, there are certain goals and dreams that we should be working toward because they are a manifestation of our growth, but they will be less meaningful than what happens to us as a result. So I'll give you a strange example maybe, but this is what hits me. Someone once said to me years ago, and they were a wannabe author and they were in a workshop of mine and they wanted to put work into the world. And they said, oh my God, does it feel great just to have so many people who are grateful for your work? And I said, I don't really think about it. I said, I'm aware of it when I'm in a room like this because a good number of you are appreciative. I said, and that's lovely. But to me, I only see that as my job. Like, I should be helping bring some value to your life that you will then run with and that I know nothing else about, nor is it my place to know.
Okay.
The reason I'm grateful I get to do this is because I have been fed by what I call the wheel of creativity and the wheel of spirituality that lives on our planet that has helped me unlock more of myself. So the fact I get to give back to it. But the point I made to them was, when it first was the case that I was putting work out into the world, whatever part of me craved or felt I was designed to offer things to people, it did get fulfilled, and then it went away. Equally, I see a lot of people chasing adulation or adoration, and I feel bad for them. Because if you're constantly trying to get approval or appreciation from others, there's a wound in operation in you that none of those people are ever going to help you get to the bottom of unless you pay attention and recognize the wound is still there. So for me, that was an interesting experiential learning. I was like, oh, I do remember actually back at the beginning, it was pretty extraordinary. But then that moved on and I haven't thought about it for 15 years. I've just been doing my work and I've grown with the job as the job has grown me. So
Mm.
I don't know if that helps, but that comes to me as an example of something we might be chasing outside. The bigger question is not, do we get it? The bigger question is, do we transform when we get it? And do we move
Yes.
on and do we let it go? Because that's what those outer goals are designed to be, unless you're chasing the wrong things or trying to fix a wound the wrong way.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that there's been an awful lot of focus put on the, you can manifest anything you want and you can be that superstar. You can, and, you can if that's what you want, but you can't bypass the things that you need to do to really grow yourself.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I think is so important to remember is our mind cannot understand what the future is. Our intuition can see future visions, and I'm a futurist. It's one of my parts of my design. However, because I'm a futurist, I also have had to learn to pay close attention to how I am in the now. Am I capable of moving into this right now? No, my body isn't ready. Then I'll wait. It will come. So I think a lot of people chase these dreams with the assumption that it's going to give them this thing, and they are wholly unprepared for all of the other things that come with that dream that they hadn't banked on. So
Yeah,
I think it, I used to, when I was younger, watch people who were famous or successful, and they would say, oh, it's not all it's cracked up to be, and it has a lot of problems with it. And I remember at the time, I think the common response, oh, it's all right for them. And
yeah,
actually, there is a shadow side to all of that. I've known some very, very well-known people, and I've had, little versions of that myself, and there are shadow sides to it. So the point is that any dream that we can create that we're thinking is only going to bring us happiness and peace, we're probably not looking closely enough at the map. There's going to be some other things in that we're going to have to navigate, learn
yes,
from, which is why chasing an external and only chasing an external is kind of heartbreaking. It's why when I do see those people who are trapped in kind of a loop of having their self-worth affirmed by the public online, and I've met some people where you can see they're not happy, but they're feeding on this loop. No one's winning in that. It's like the guru trap. No one's winning. The guru is not winning, and the people worshipping the guru are not winning.
no,
It's always going to end in tragedy. So I think that's where you have to just be very mindful of your own energy. And at the end of the day, we're all having a completely unique experience. And that's quite terrifying when you really think about it, because we are connected. We want to be connected. But if you really understand that the only person who's experiencing the world the way you are is you, that's quite shocking, I think. So,
yes,
but it
yeah,
wakes you up too, and it makes you more attuned to this very unique life you have on this energy ride we are in called humans on Earth.
mm. Well, I want to play another clip. We have one of the Z's talking about the dimensions. So let's listen to this.
How do I get aware of things like multidimensionality? Well, I want to start understanding the term dimension, realm, plane, because you use them a lot and we can get confused, or perhaps I think I know what one word means and somebody else is using another definition. So if we could take a moment, and would you explain when you say the word dimension? Are there just 12? Could you expand on our understanding of that term?
Yes, but we also have to remind you here that we did not create these terms. You did, on Earth. So when we use this language with you, we are trying to help you expand your language understanding so that you can expand out of what we described in conversation one as the very one-dimensional way of thinking that you are all encouraged to have. Black or white, right or wrong. It does not work that way. In multidimensionality, as we have said many times, so many things can be possible all at once, just as you can be in many different time zones at once, as many of you can attest. Those of you that astral travel or that have profound past life experiences one day when you walk through a forest and it doesn't quite make sense to you, you can tap into all of it all of the time. But we're going to give you a different way of looking at realms, planes, and dimensions, not necessarily saying we are the dictionary definition, for there is no one being, person, human entity that can give you the final definition. The definition will keep evolving as you evolve. And these are words that need understanding, so we will do our best to give you a way of looking at it. Now, as you have spoken, we exist dominantly in the 9th dimension, but we also extend into the 12th, and we can meet you anywhere from the 4th to the 9th, depending on the conversation and what is needed. But our dominant frequency is the 9th dimension. Now, why we bring this up? We would like you to see dimensions not as horizontal lines going up to the sky. We would like you to think of planes of existence in that way. So when we speak to you from our realm, we are basically saying the realm of being out of the body, the realm of being connected to the astral, the realm of being energy beings who have been in form but are now brought back into the realm of energy. Now, it is tricky because at the moment we are in form. We are speaking to you and we are coming through the form of Lee, and that is a multidimensional act on his behalf and our behalf and on your behalf as the listener. We are all co-creating this together.
That's a really interesting thing for us to hear, because through movies, through just the progress that we're making, we're hearing a lot about dimensions, and a lot of people don't truly understand what that means. So I'm really happy that the Z's explained that to us. I want to get a little bit personal now. You started your career as a musician, and you're a very accomplished musician, and it's your first love, and you've got 5 albums out now, and
a few
something
more,
like
actually.
that. Yeah.
We've been busy.
You've been very busy. Yeah. I've got 2 questions that we need to get in before we close, and one is, where do you get the inspiration from for the songs that you write? And the other question, and I want to make sure we don't forget this, is you did a cover of Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill, which I thought was a very brave move. And I want to know what made you decide to do it. So let's start with the inspiration.
Okay,
Where does that come from?
It's interesting because I loved music as a kid. I have always loved music and sang as a kid and all of that. But it wasn't till I was 21 that I started hearing music, like literally above my head. I would hear these songs, and then I learnt a few chords on the guitar to kind of get them down. And that was how it started. And years later, the Z's told me that was how we got you first. We got you through music, and then 2 years later, you were ready to hear us. So I've always felt it's very co-created with spirit, and the musicians who will talk about that always resonated with me. I'm like, yeah, this is shamanic. That music, that melody, it exists somewhere, and sure, you might be the one working to shape it, or it might be your slant lyrically that you add that gives it your unique flavor. But these things exist. That's how I see it. And so, yeah, the inspiration, particularly in the last 5 years, Devor and I have been steadily Devor Buzik, who I work with, he's my main musical collaborator. We would create songs in workshop rooms in response to people's feelings and processes. And so we've been steadily recording a lot of those. And I've been very directly creating quite spiritually infused music with him, as well as some of the personal ones, which relate to the human lessons that we all go through. Kate Bush, Running Up That Hill. I would never have dreamed of doing that song. It was a weird synchronicity. I have loved Kate, like serious fan, since I was 16. I went to fan conventions, like the whole enchilada. And if she brings an album out now, I'm buying the t-shirt, the tote bag, the whole thing. I'm fully in. So when she had this global moment with Running Up That Hill, I heard it on the TV show Stranger Things, and they did this big orchestral version. And I heard the lyrics differently. And I said to Devor, what if we took this back to intimacy? And this whole division energy that we've had in the world the last few years, I heard it through that lens. And then, of course, I was terrified because, Running Up That Hill is a masterpiece and Kate's a master. So I was like, what am I doing? Trying to, when I was in the vocal booth, I lost my nerve a little bit, and then I pulled myself together and we did it. And and we were really pleased with the results. We were happy enough to put it out. So yeah, that's how that happened.
Well, I really enjoyed listening to it, and it is quite
Thank you.
different, and it stands in its own right, I think. So, one last question: what advice do you offer for coping when things get really rocky? Many people are feeling that right now.
I think we're all asking that question, but one thing that just comes back to me time and time again is you will have the best experience of this time if you make yourself a priority in your life. That doesn't mean become selfish. That doesn't mean exclude people. But I think so many of us have not really ever been called to find out what we need, or to know who we are, or know what we need. And I think friends help with this. I know I had a very strange view of myself for many years. I felt quite dysmorphic about my own identity. And then friends would say to me, "Oh, well, you love to laugh. You're always the one." And I'd be like, "Oh, am I? Okay." So they would tell me who I was. And from understanding who I was over the years, I thought, oh, I need laughter regularly at some level. I need music. What are the things I need that help me feel like myself? And am I giving myself enough of those things, especially at time of stress, especially if a big thing is happening to me or to people I love or to the planet as a whole? So I think many of us wish that everything was just peaceful tomorrow. But we know that's not going to be what happens right now. That's not going to be the state of the outer world right now. So the question is, how can you cultivate and protect peace for yourself in your own life, and figure out the ways you do that and start to do it and start to employ it? And you'll be amazed how your vibration shifts when you have that regular practice. And don't beat yourself up if you fall off the wagon. Just get back on again the next week.
Good advice. Lee Harris, I think we're out of time now. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you so much, Sandie. Likewise.
So, Conversations with the Z's, Book 1, The Energetics of the New Human Soul, and Book 2, Awakening Your Dimensional Self, which releases this month in the USA and on June the 9th in the UK, are both published by New World Library. For more information about Lee Harris, his online events, books, music, Impact the World podcast, and his monthly energy reports, which are brilliant, visit his website, leeharrisenergy.com. That's it for this week. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and I'll be back with another edition of What is Going On at the same time next week. Till then, it's goodbye from me, and thank you again to Lee Harris.
Thank you.